Satna, hello, and welcome to OpalRoseOracle. Welcome to our Venus Day story time as we continue changing woman and her sisters. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Thank you for showing up and being curious. And I'm so happy to be here with you to share these stories. So if you have children, this is especially for them. So bring them on in. If you need a glass of water, if you need a pillow, blanket, if you want to dress up, all is welcome. All is welcome. All is encouraged. Today, we're going to continue our tale of changing woman and her sisters by reading the story of Sedna, woman of the sea, supreme deity of the Inuit people. Sedna, woman of the sea, is the supreme deity of the traditional Inuit people. According to the old stories, she lived in the depths of the ocean, the mistress of all sea creatures. When she wishes, she can send her animals swimming up to the ocean's surface, where they can be hunted for food. But if Sedna grows angry, she keeps her animals inside her house, and then there is nothing to hunt, and the people go hungry. When this happens, the Angaku, the Angaguk, the Eskimo shaman, must journey into a trance to Sedna's home beneath the waves and comb her hair for her. Only then will she release some of her animals so that people have food once more. I'll let you get a good look of Sedna with her long black hair and her deep eyes. You may notice her lack of hands. And in our story, you'll find out why. She is the mother to all the fish, all the sea lions, all of the whales, all the sharks, all the animals of the ocean. That is her empire, her dynasty, her world. So let's journey together and find out more. Long ago, at the beginning of all things, there lived a young woman more beautiful than any other, before or since. Not only was she beautiful, she was also very proud. Her name was Sedna, and she lived alone with her father, for her mother had died giving birth to her. She had thick black hair that fell to her waist, and nothing pleased her more than to spend endless hours staring out to sea as she combed her long hair. Every young man in Sedna's village was madly in love with her, for she was so beautiful. One by one, they came to her and begged her to marry. But since she refused, let's make sure. Yeah. But she refused them all. No, I will not have you. Some of the men were handsome. Others were skilled hunters, while others were kind and gentle and knew how to care for a woman. But none of these men seemed right for her. She wanted something different, though she didn't know what. So Sedna stayed by herself, waiting for whatever wonderful thing might come her way someday. In early spring, a stranger came to the village. He was handsome as handsome can be, with skin like bronze and hair as thick and shiny as Sedna's own. He walked so lightly that it seemed his feet barely touched the ground, and he wore dark glasses made of walrus tusks so that none could see his eyes. He walked straight up to Sedna and smiled at her. "You will be my wife," he said. Sedna tossed her hair and turned away. "I don't think so," she answered him, but her heart beat quickly, and she longed to look into the eyes of this mysterious stranger. The next day he came to her as she sat alone on a high cliff, staring out to sea. "Come with me, Sedna," the stranger urged in a voice as sweet as honey. "Come with me across the sea. I have a beautiful home there, more beautiful than any in this village. You shall sleep on soft bear skins and wear clothes of white feathers. How beautiful you are, my dear one. Far too beautiful for this small place. Come away with me and be my wife." Sedna smiled at the stranger and tossed her hair. She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no. On the following day, the stranger approached her once more. "Oh, Sedna," he said with a sigh, "if only you would marry me and come to my home across the sea. My people would honor you as if you were a queen. You would have reindeer meat to eat every day of the year. How happy we would be, my dearest one. Tomorrow I must leave your village and journey back to my homeland. Say you will come with me." Sedna looked at her hands and then out to sea. Her fingers itched to tear off the man's dark glasses and look into his eyes. She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no. The next day was set for the stranger's departure. Early in the morning, Sedna climbed up to her spot on the cliff and waited for him to find her. Soon he came and sat down beside her. He began to sing to her in a language she didn't understand. The strange, sweet music made her feel sad and hollow inside. She longed to gaze into the stranger's eyes and see herself reflected there. "Do you know what I was singing, my darling?" the stranger murmured when his song finished. Sedna shook her head mutely. "I was singing of how much I love you and how lonely I will be on my long journey back to my homeland. I will think of you day and night, my Sedna, my darling. You have stolen my heart, and I fear I shall never get it back again. My sweet, if you only would come with me, how happy you would make me." The stranger stood and turned to leave her. But Sedna put out her hand and stopped him. The desire to see into his eyes overwhelmed her. She could not possibly let him leave without her. "I will come," she whispered. "I will come." The stranger insisted that they must be married at once and leave that very day. The journey to his homeland was a long and dangerous one, and they couldn't risk the bad weather setting in before they had reached their destination. Sedna hurried to tell her father the news. Her father was not happy to hear of her decision. He begged her not to go so far away with this strange man, about whom they knew nothing. But Sedna was determined, and since she had already refused to marry every young man in the area, he realized this was his last chance to see his daughter wed. "Go safely, my daughter," Sedna's father said at last. "When the spring comes once more, I myself will travel across the sea to visit you. Until then, goodbye." So Sedna set out to sea in her new husband's kayak. The journey was long and difficult, but after many weeks they sighted a small island whose rocky shores were stained white with the droppings of fulmars, the noisy seabirds that wheeled in circles over their heads. Sedna's husband shouted with joy, "At last, my dear, we are home." Sedna looked at her husband in disbelief. "This is your home?" she cried. "This is the place you spoke so highly of? Why, there's nothing on this island but a flock of noisy fulmars." Her husband threw back his head and began laughing like a madman. He laughed so hard that his walrus tusk glasses slipped from his face, and Sedna saw that his eyes were beady red circles. Slowly, his laugh changed from the laugh of a man to the harsh cry of a fulmar. His arm became wings. His lovely bronze skin sprouted white feathers. Sedna realized with horror that the handsome man she married so hastily was, in fact, a fulmar, which had tricked her into marriage by disguising himself as a man. From that day on, Sedna lived a miserable existence. The fulmars kept her in a smelly tent made of fish skins and gave her nothing but fish bones to eat. They laughed at her because she could not fly and pecked at her whenever she complained. Her husband's red eyes filled her with revulsion so that she could not bear to look at him. The only thing that kept Sedna from utter despair was the thought that when winter was over, her father would come, and as he promised, and rescue her from this hideous new family. At last, the harsh Arctic winter gave way to spring. The ice that bound up the sea began to melt, and the waves broke once more on the shore of the full Martyrs Island. Sedna knew that soon her father would arrive. Every day she scanned the horizon anxiously, hoping for the first glimpse of the kayak. Just when she had begun to fear that her father had forgotten his promise to visit her, she saw a boat appear from behind an iceberg. It was afternoon, and the Fulmars were all out fishing over the open sea. Sedna waved her arms wildly to attract his attention, and soon her father was paddling towards her with a worried frown upon his face. As soon as his kayak drew close to the shore, Sedna waded into the icy water and climbed inside. She told her father what had happened, and she begged him to take her away. Her father had been anticipating a warm welcome from his son-in-law with a good meal of reindeer meat after his long journey. Now, he shook his head in disgust. "You foolish girl," he shouted angrily. "I warned you not to marry a stranger. You could have had any man you wanted, but you had to choose a Fulmar for a husband." "Father, I'm sorry," Sedna cried in desperation. "Please, take me away from this horrible place before the Fulmars come back and try to stop me from leaving." Reluctantly, her father turned the boat around and began to paddle back in the direction from which he had come. The sea was calm, and soon they were a good distance from the Fulmars Island. In the meantime, the Fulmar returned home from fishing and found his beautiful wife was gone. At once, he suspected that her father had come for her, and the bird flew out over the ocean to try to catch her. After many hours of searching, he spied at last the little kayak bobbing on the sea below him. Swooping down, he called to Sedna's father to return his wife to him. Sedna's father pretended not to hear and kept on paddling as fast as he could. "Give her back! Give her back!" croaked the bird. But Sedna's father paid no notice, and Sedna herself huddled in the boat and covered her face with her shiny black hair. Now the Fulmar grew angry. He beat his enormous wings in the air, and a cold wind began to blow from the north. A dark cloud covered the pale midnight sun. Rain and hail began to fall. Waves as high as mountains rose up, threatening to capsize the fragile kayak. "Give me back my wife! Give me back my wife!" screeched the bird. The waves rose higher and higher. In mortal terror, certain that he and his daughter would soon be thrown into a watery grave, Sedna's father seized her by the hair and flung her overboard. "She's yours," he shouted up to the Fulmar. "Let me live." But Sedna refused to surrender herself and clung with all her strength to the edge of her father's boat. Another vast wave lifted them high into the air, tossing the tiny kayak this way and that. Still, Sedna clung fast to the boat. Her father took out his knife and cut off some of her fingers, yet Sedna still managed to cling on. He cut off the rest of her fingers. And still, she clung on. Finally, he cut off her hands. With nothing to grip with, the beautiful young woman sank beneath the waves. Immediately, the sea grew calm. And Sedna's father paddled out of sight. Down, 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 sank Sedna. Down to the bottom of the sea. But she did not die. As she sank, her shiny black hair grew even longer. Drifting out across all the oceans of the world to become seaweed. Her severed fingers were transformed into seals and walruses and salmon. Her severed hands became whales. These animals of the sea circled lovingly about her, accompanying her down to the ocean's floor. There, in the deepest depths of the ocean, Sedna found a house waiting for her. A bridge as narrow as a knife's edge led up to it, and a wheel of fire spun before it. The house was as clear and shining as a crystal. A house of many rooms, shimmering with all the colors of the rainbow. Outside the house burned a lamp, whose well of oil is never empty. In this house of splendor lives Sedna, the goddess of the sea. She has everything her heart desires, and her animals are always with her. Only one thing troubles her. Because she has no hands, she cannot comb her wonderfully long hair. And sometimes it becomes unbearably tangled. But if any Inuit is brave enough to journey down to her palace and comb out her hair, she rewards all human beings by sending the sea creatures up to the surface of the water, where they can be hunted for food. And that is the tale of Sedna, a supreme Inuit deity, the goddess of the oceans, the mother of all sea creatures. I hope you enjoyed our story today. I certainly did. Sedna's tale is a powerful one. A story where we learn about mistakes and making hasty decisions and the danger that that can put us in. people, places, and things are not always as they seem. So we must listen with our hearts and our guts and really analyze with our minds. When we have strangers come into our worlds, they can offer all the best things. But you remember the Fulmar husband. When she first met him, he kept his eyes covered. Many say the eyes are the windows to the soul. So, when you meet new people or in new situations, look for their soul. Look for their truth. Look for their hearts. And if they hide it from you, and they keep their soul, their heart, their truth from you, take that as a warning to use caution, to really listen and use your wisdom. And even if we make mistakes, because we all do, even goddesses, there's always redemption. For a pure heart, there is always victory. And Sedna was taken care of. She became goddess of the ocean in her crystal palace at the bottom of the sea. And she has so many beautiful friends. Whales and seals and salmon. And like a goddess, she so graciously shares those with all of us. So when we go through a process of coming back from our mistakes, there's always wisdom, a pearl, one would say, or one could say, that can be shared with others that will help them not make the same mistake, or not help us not make the same mistake again. Good things can come from the bad things that happen to us. It's how we rise on the other side. How we stay true to our heart. Make the decision to leave. Make this decision to stay true. And then share the wisdom that we learned from whatever had happened. I had so much fun with Olivia. I really, really did. I'll give you one last good look at her. Such beautiful artwork. She is truly a beautiful goddess. And next week, one of my favorite stories and my favorite goddess, one of my favorite goddesses. Next week, we'll read the story of Kuan Yin, the Compassionate A Buddhist Goddess. I really look forward to this story, and I think you will too. So thank you for joining me. I love you all very, very much. If you enjoyed yourself, please like, subscribe, and share. And I'll see you all very, very soon. Take care. Infinite love and blessings. Bye-bye.